A few weeks ago, I participated in my first game jam ever, and it turned out to be one of the worst decisions I've ever made. After many months working on my main project, Cat Survivors, I felt like I needed a break. I wanted to step away from the intense grind and work on something shorter and more experimental. So a game jam seemed like the perfect opportunity to explore new ideas, push my creativity, and possibly even learn some new skills. That week, there were 3 game jams happening at the same time. First, the Godot Wild Jam, second, the Pixel Game Jam, and lastly, the 5th edition of the Bullet Hell Jam. So I decided to wait for all the themes to be announced and then participate in whichever seemed the most interesting. The topics were Consequences, Void, and Aqua. Out of these 3, my favorite one was Void, but I really wanted to participate in the Pixel Game Jam, as it was the biggest out of the 3, and that way I could gather more feedback from other players. And I'm also a pixel artist, so I decided to create a small prototype for both the Godot Wild Jam and the Pixel Game Jam. But after watching the trailer for the Pixel Game Jam, it reminded me of the game Bubble Trouble, or to be more precise, Pang, also known as Buster Bros in some countries, which just so happens to be my favorite arcade game, and I immediately thought how fun it would be to play that game, but turning it into a roguelike. So I didn't need a prototype anymore. I decided I would participate in the Pixel Game Jam to create a tribute to my favorite arcade game. The first day, I worked on the basics for the game, creating the enemies, the movement system for the player, and a basic shooting system. Everything really basic and similar to other things I've made before, so it didn't require a lot of effort. Although I tried to handle the bouncing enemies through different animations instead of creating a different node and script for each size, but that didn't work at all, which made me waste a good part of the Saturday. The second day, I could barely work, but I managed to squeeze some time to create new sprites for the enemies. And I also drew a basic background for the game, which suited the theme for the jam. And the third day, I created the cloud enemy that you're seeing on screen. This enemy has 3 health points and shoots a really powerful lightning hitting the ground at a really high speed. The fourth day, I started working on turning my game into a roguelike. To do this, I created an extremely basic system to show when the level is completed. This works by checking if all nodes in the enemy's group have been killed each time an enemy is killed. I don't know if this is the proper way to do it, as I've never made a game where you beat a level by killing all the enemies, but it works, so it's okay, I guess. On top of that, I created a basic upgrade system and the first 2 upgrades for the game. And with that, the game is technically playable. But there's still a big problem. It's not fun at all. The only enemy that will spawn is the seagull, which will spawn on the same exact spot every time. And there are just 2 upgrades, so the 5th day I decided to work on this. I created a grand total of 7 upgrades and 16 spawn patterns, 8 easy ones for the first 5 levels, and 8 difficult ones for the next 5 levels. This way, each time you play, the game will feel more or less random. I didn't have time to create a proper system for this spawning of enemies, so instead I created an array filled with arrays, which were at the same time filled with instances and spawn positions for each enemy. Efficient? Not at all, but it works, so once again, it's okay. With this out of the way, I just needed to create menus for the game, and after that, I just needed to take a few screenshots, export the game, and submit it to the game jam. But that is exactly where things started to go wrong. Even though I finished a few days before the deadline, since I had to work and I knew I would have no time during the last 2 to 3 days, I couldn't find the submit form that this game jam required all participants to fill, since they had decided to only open it 2 days before the end of the game jam. So I created the Eats page and waited for that form. When the form was finally accessible, I was so busy that I had to wait for another day to fill it. Luckily, I didn't have any problems here. That was not the case with many other players though, as the organizers decided to close it almost an entire day before the deadline, which meant that there were 634 form submissions and 747 Eats submissions, according to the organizers. Luckily, they reopened it 4 hours later, giving a few people the chance to submit it, although I read a few people who missed this opportunity, since it was reopened at night here in Europe, and many couldn't check the Discord until they finished working the next day, meaning that they thought they had completely missed the chance because of this lack of communication. But everything was still fine with my game. I had submitted the form, uploaded the itch page, and I had even received a few comments already, saying that my game was really fun and how they wished it was a bit longer. But the next day, when the voting started, everything turned into chaos again. They shared an Excel with all the games and published an announcement saying that if your game was not on that list, it had been disqualified. The chat was soon filled with people complaining about their games being missing. In many cases, because of the confusing messages from the organizers, where sometimes it seemed like every member had to fill the form, sometimes it looked like only the leader had to fill the form, but all the members had to upload the game, or only one person had to do all of that. Some were also kicked because they submitted the game to 2 different game jams happening at the same time, even though there were no rules against it. Luckily, my game was still there, but with a message saying did not display the correct credit verification format, but can be reviewed. So I immediately checked the credit info. Now, do you remember that form that they decided to open only 2 days before the deadline, as if people have no jobs to take care of? Well, one of the things that it said was that you had to display the credits with the exact same format on the form and the itch page. But since my game submission was 2 days older, and the game was made solely by me, I didn't write the same for both. What was the difference though? Well, on the form, which required you to write your role, name, and the link to your itch page, I wrote Jack of all trades, Aidan, and the link to my page. Meanwhile, on my itch page, I wrote all done by me, Aidan, and the link to my page. Now, I could maybe understand being eliminated because of this, although it still feels a bit ridiculous, if it wasn't because many of the admitted games had no credits at all, or displayed completely different formats. So I decided to open a ticket, to which the only response was a copy-paste message saying that the format was role, name, and URL, and they didn't check that I had already fixed that. I thought that it would take some time, but since it said it could be reviewed, I waited patiently. That is, until they release a list with all the final games. An extremely short list, I must say, considering the 700 original submissions. With this list, they included a message saying that you could create a ticket if you wanted them to verify your game. A ticket that couldn't be made, since they closed this tool because according to them, it was malfunctioning. So after all this fuss, what did we end up with? A game jam that started with 9,000 participants and over 700 final submissions was reduced to a list of 100 games that the judges will get to play. Why did this happen? Well, that's simple. The game jam grew way too much. And as we say in Spain, el que mucho abarca, poco aprieta. Which means something like if you aim for too much, you will end up with nothing. But what's even more infuriating is that even though their ticket system was supposedly broken, they created a publishing ticket where you could team up with the organizer to publish your game on Steam. But I really hope that for future editions, they will find a better system to manage everything that doesn't require 3 people to manage everything on their own. But as for me, I think I won't be participating in any game jam for quite a while. Anyways, what's done is done, and at least I got a few good things from this game jam. Not only did I manage to create a fully playable game in 5 days, which I will definitely expand into a full release in the future, but I also received amazing feedback from many other participants who took some time to play my game, rate it, and leave a comment. I'm really grateful for all the comments and the support that I received. And if you want to play the game on itch, the link will be in the description. Oh, you're still here? If you want to learn how to make pixel art like mine, I will leave a video here, and if you want to check the game that I'm working on, you can find it here. See ya!